wrong here, okay? You I mean, you've probably overcome some of the most life's biggest challenges that some people can ever experience, which is just in general having both parents die. But in the way that you experience the death of your parents is unlike any other story I've ever seen in my entire life. And I don't want to take too much. Obviously, it's in the book, and you know that's not what's most amazing about your story. What's most amazing about your story is how you recovered as a late teen, mid 20s to not only like recover, but like use what happened in your life as a force for good to like inspire other people and go on this wellness and health journey to help other people find like their true self. And I'm just so fascinated by you and your story and your post and everything. So um, I just want to say thank you so much. And for those of you guys that are listening right now, you're in for a treat. I promise you, you're in for a treat. So, Arian, tell us about you before we go into your story. Who like, if someone asks who is Arian, how would you describe that? What would you describe that about yourself?
Hmm. Well, thanks for that introduction and thanks for your question. If I was to answer the question who I am now, I'd probably start with, the typical things that we answer when someone asks you who you are. Right now, I'm a yoga therapist, which means I work one-on-one with people to bring the healing power of yoga to people who might not be able to come to a typical yoga class. I'm also
Mm.
a personal trainer, and I teach group fitness, I teach martial arts. I kind of dabble in the whole health field, the whole health and wellness field. And I'm really passionate about teaching people how to understand their bodies and to kind of unlock themselves from the places in which we get stuck, stuck in chairs and stuck in chronic pain and just stuck in general, stuck in the mind. And so,
Mm.
that's my big goal in life is to reach as many people as I can with the healing power of movement and the healing power of exercise. And I've got this wellness app on my phone that's telling me I've got 5 minutes left on Facebook, so I'm going to shut that off real quick. I really apologize.
Oh shoot! So it only gives you a certain amount of time on social media each day. While we're waiting for him to shut this off, I just got to show you. If you haven't followed items on Facebook, look at this guy. So,
There we
I
go.
mean, on his Facebook post, like, look at this. I was watching some of these videos of you, man, and I'm like, this guy is intense. I mean, with all your how you use your body and the flexibility that you have, and using your body weight for all these crazy moves. Like I call them crazy because I can't do them, but man, it's just so impressive. What you're able to do and what you're involved in. Really cool. So I love that. So life and wellness coach. Let me ask you this. Um, let's cut to it, man. You walked in, you woke up in your late teens, okay? And in the story, you started off in the sense that you wake up to your mom having, was it an aneurysm or a heart attack or?
An aneurysm.
So mom, you wake up, you're 18 years old, and your mom has a sudden brain aneurysm, and she dies short after that. Is that right? When you're 18?
Yeah, so the story goes into the details, but basically what happened was I woke up shortly after graduating high school one morning to the sound of my mother receiving CPR from her fiance, and she wasn't responding to the CPR, and then the you know paramedics come and whisk her away, and 3 days later they're telling us that she's brain dead, which means that her brain can't support oxygen, her body can't breathe on its own, it has to have a ventilator, and asked us to pull the plug. And I was 18, my sister was 21, we were really like still kids, and we went with the advice of the doctors. We kind of went with what people around us were saying. She'd want to donate her organs, and she can't do that if she lives much longer this way. And so we made that kind of tough decision to pull the plug. And that was probably the hardest thing. That was definitely the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, and it really sent me spiraling downward for a while. And I was already kind of on that downward path, but luckily and eventually, and I want to let you kind of, ask what you want to ask, but eventually I was able to use it instead for fuel for building myself back up and turning my life around.
So before this situation, and I mean, many of us have experienced that. I know my mom died when I was 20, and many people that read your story and are listening to this maybe have a family member that unexpectedly die, especially when they're in their teens or adolescence, and I mean, it's tough to recover from that. And I want to mention, you said that you were already kind of on this, spiral of, drug abuse and whatnot. At what age would you say some of that abuse started?
Well, so I probably started messing around with drugs and alcohol around 13. I
Mm,
lived in a really small town, and there was nothing to do but, idolize the kids smoking cigarettes, the high school kids. And real quick, we were recruited by the high school kids to steal them cigarettes and, go in and steal beer for them and stuff so that, if we got in trouble, nothing would happen to them. And so, yeah, I was pretty young when I started messing around with that stuff. And then when it came to high school, it was just an easy way to kind of quote unquote fit in. Even though it really took me away from who I really was, it was all that I knew to do to cope with just regular teenage stuff. And then when
sure.
and then shortly before my mom died, I was really starting to get into drugs, just just because that had become kind of an identity I had made for myself. I wanted to be this hippie kid, and I wanted to walk the darker path. And then, yeah, when my mom passed away, it was like full force at those drugs as a coping mechanism, and it really took me all the way down to my rock bottom.
So you experimented 13, you kind of got recruited by these high school kids to do some stealing and you know and 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 kind of get enrolled into some drugs, alcohol, which is pretty common for most teens. But then you have this life circumstance where mom dies, and you're 18 years old, so you kind of spiral even down into this rabbit hole even further. How so from 18, but then you kind of get yourself out of it from 18 to like your mid 20s. You kind of started climbing out, got to college, or is that did I make that up? Or
I haven't reread the story. I haven't reread the timeline that I put in Grab recently. I kind of looked at it when you sent me a copy, but I may have left out the part where I went to jail shortly after my mom died. Basically,
wow,
what happened was I fell really deep into the pit of, depression and stuff like that. And I was doing a lot of drugs, and some kids found out that I was doing and had drugs and came to my house and held me up, took my drugs, took my money, took some of my mom's stuff, trashed my mom's house, and that really put me on the bottom of the barrel. I was
and
real
you're like
rock bottom.
19 at the time or so.
I was still 18. This was pretty
Oh,
shortly after my mom died, maybe 3 months after she died. And
mm,
then my girlfriend at the time was getting kind of tired of, me being so depressive, and she cheated on me, and that kind of sent me into a rage. And I went to the kid's house. I tried to fight him, and I ended up going to jail for about 2 months, and that was the real rock bottom for me. And it took those 2 months of sitting around thinking about, the choices I had made in life to really realize that I never wanted to go back to that state of being. And while I
sure.
was in jail, I actually started exercising for the first time, like really regularly. And when I got out, I kept exercising, and that was something that helped me to cope as I dealt with starting to separate myself from all the people that I had become friends with in high school, all these people who would have supported me in wanting to do drugs again. So I separated myself from those folks, and the exercising was like the only thing I had to kind of, give me that dopamine I'd gotten used to, those positive body chemicals that can come from drugs, but when they come from, something else, that they actually come out in a more healthy, healthful way. And so that was the thing that really started me heading upwards. And I shortly, soon after that, discovered martial arts, and that's what
Mm.
solidified the health thing for me, the discipline, and started really taking me upward.
And that's so rich of what you just said, because what you just said is I changed my environment, but I also changed the people I associated with. And I really want anybody who's listening to this to catch that. It's like, hey, I was on this downward spiral. I had an addiction. And in the story, apparently he had a gun at some point. Is that right? In the story, that if I'm reading this right, $25,000 in cash and a gun. Where do those two things come into play, by the way?
Okay. All right. You're skimming a little bit, but that's okay. I do the same thing. I had I had bought a gun to commit suicide, basically, and
Mm.
um, and that never got used. It never got assembled. I didn't even know how to assemble it. I like went out and bought this gun, and I thought I was gonna kill myself, and I just like I couldn't even put it together. And it was just something that happened out of fear and desperation. The $25,000 part was when I went to jail. My dad had to come bail me out, and he put a $25,000 bond down, and that's what got me out of jail long enough to go to anger management and to go to a 12-step program and to basically show to the judge that this was an isolated incident. I was relatively a good kid who just had a really bad set of circumstances come up in his life. And that made it so I didn't have to spend as long in jail as I would have had to.
Mm. And I mean, dude, like I said, there's people watching this that are faced with life circumstances and are faced with environmental challenges, circle of influence, where their peer group is just maybe not serving them in a right way. How the heck did you separate yourself from it? Where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna not talk to you anymore. Like sometimes it's a little tough. You have kids banging on your door, robbing you and holding you up, and like, you can't just like disappear sometimes. Like, but how were you able to separate yourself? Did you have like a mentor? Did you have someone that was in your life? What's up, Erwin? Did you have someone in your life that you were able to lean on, or kind of guide you or mentor you, or just offer you some of this wisdom that says, hey, the people you're surrounding yourself with is no good. Obviously, if you continue doing what you're going to do, you're going to end up back in jail, or kill yourself. Like, anyone like that show up, or anything like that show up for you?
Well, my grandparents were still alive at that time, and so my hey Curtis, yeah. So my grandfather was pretty influential at that time. He offered that I move back to where I grew up, which was Charlestown, New Hampshire, and so I was actually able to physically move away from where I was going to high school and where these people were who were encouraging the more negative side of me. And the unfortunate side of that was it was, again, moving back to that small town, and it was very isolating. But it actually gave me a lot of time to work on myself. To be isolated, I was able to focus on fitness, focus on exercising and stuff like that. And eventually, I did a couple more moves and landed in a place that was really encouraging of me because I found a martial arts studio. And so you know, my grandfather passed away shortly after that, so he was a really influential person, and then he passed away. Uh,
Mm.
and so eventually I ended up doing martial arts, and my martial arts instructor was very helpful. But when you talk about, was there someone there for me? Did I have a mentor? I read that question when you kind of sent me some of the mock questions, and you know, really, I kind of hate to say this because I don't want to discourage anybody who might watch this now or later when it pops up on their feed. But it really took um, my own determination and focus because when my mom and dad died and then my grandfather died, it was really like all about um, myself. It was all about like my own will to keep going. And really, the thing that kept me motivated and kept me moving forward was after my mom died, it triggered my sister's very aggressive schizophrenia. My sister's very, very sick. She lives in a group home now. She's 33, but has the cognitive function of a 12-year-old. And after my dad killed himself and I lost all these people that I cared about, those thoughts of like giving up, those thoughts of suicide, they kind of disappeared because I realized that, I would never do that to my sister.
Mm.
Was the end of it for me. It was like all these thoughts of giving up disappeared because I had people to take care of. And
Yeah.
eventually it turned into not only taking care of my sister, but then when my grandfather died, turned into taking care of my grandmother. Now I'm my grandmother's guardian. I protect her from people who have tried to abuse her and take advantage of her. I have lots of members of my family with mental illness, and without me, I don't know where they would be. And so that's what really kept me going. I want to tell you that there was somebody for me that really mentored me and really kept me going. And there were people along the way who sculpted me and helped me. But really, the thing that was the change for me was I had to take care of others. And it was too selfish to say, I'm going to give up, I'm going to commit suicide, or I'm going to fall into drugs, or whatever my old ways of identifying with negativity and identifying with pain and struggle. They weren't serving me anymore. And
Mm.
it turned into this kind of growth cycle of up and a little down and up and a little down. I would find these things that were really helping me, like fitness and now yoga and martial arts, and then something would happen and it would take me down a notch. My sister would go to the hospital. My grandmother would become homeless and I'd have to sue somebody to get her back in her home. These things keep happening. And it's a really
Yeah.
great metaphor for life, that we think that something's going to just magically turn us around and we're going to just become this happier version of ourselves and life isn't going to keep coming at us. And that's just not true. Life will always continue to come back at us, and it's how we handle it. It's how we get knocked off the horse and climb back up with our bruises and our scrapes, and we just keep pushing. And that's what keeps happening to me. I keep going up and I get knocked down a little bit, but then it's not like I'm knocked back down to square one. It's like
Yeah.
I still got that forward momentum. And when I get back up, I'm stronger than I was a year ago. And that just keeps happening year after year. And that's what I try to encourage people to know is that, you will get knocked down. Life
Yeah.
will always throw you the curveball and, you're going to get hurt. But it's how we recover that really demonstrates our resiliency and demonstrates how we can take these things and, like you said, like transform, become a new version of yourself and just keep getting stronger every day.
I love that. That's so rich because it's true. Sometimes people think like, oh, I fell down or I failed, I fell off the horse. It's like I love the analogy use of levels because it's true. Like say what you were at level 0 when you were in jail, rock bottom with a gun, to commit suicide, and let's say you got to level 7, right? Just because circumstance happened, maybe you knocked down to level 6 or level 5, but you're not all the way down to level 0 again. It's just like you went down just 1 or 2 levels and then boom, all right, I can climb my way back up to where I was, and then I can go up 1 or 2 more steps. So every time you go up, 4 steps at a time and you only get knocked down 2, you climb up another 4, you're still making progress. And I really love that. And it kind of brought back video game memories, like it's like once you die, it's like, cool, well, I didn't go all the way back to the very, very beginning. I went back just like to the beginning of that level and I was able to start it all over again. I really love that. I think that's really rich. So I want to also ask, I'm curious on this. You said that determination has to come from you. And I like what Joan said, determination is key. Um, were you doing anything to influence yourself as far as reading books or listening to podcasts or motivational movies or anything to kind of feed your mind, meditation, or like anything to kind of still the noise during that process? Because um, I could only imagine, because I'm going to bring up what I thought was the climax of your story about getting the call from dad and then going home and finding him. Like that, in my opinion, was just like, what the hell? I didn't expect. Like, I was like, oh, all right. The climax of the story was when mom died, went to jail, got bailed out, and then, started changing his life. And I was like, wow. And then all of a sudden, boom, another climax of, you're finally getting your life together. and then boom, you walk into essentially a murder scene. I mean, my mind was I was just totally taken back by that whole situation because it was unexpected in your story. And I'm curious if you had like found a center of the, whether your center was the books or the motivation or the meditation that you were able to find and then revisit when this situation happened with dad. I'm curious on that. Where it kind of froze up. But the last point that I know we were talking about, the last thing I heard was you said it's funny you say about the video games, and that was the last thing I.
Well, you were talking about this idea of like, we level up throughout life. And I think a lot of times people feel like, when they get knocked down, that's just saying, we're back to square one. And I keep getting knocked back down. And when I get back up, I just don't feel the same. And I really try to encourage people to recognize the progress they've made in spite of the hardships. And
Mm,
you mentioned the whole idea about that connecting to like the video game metaphor. And and then you asked me, what was I doing to feed my mind during this time before my dad died? And to be honest, even though I was really getting into taking care of my body, I was still stuck in like old ways of coping, playing video games and stuff like that. And right before my dad died, I was like really getting into the video games. It was like the gym, jujitsu, and then video games. And that was like my whole life. And I was starting my college career then. When I got into college, I kind of like erased the need for the video games and I had something to really go into my life. But it wasn't until after my dad's suicide that I really found meditation and yoga. And I started, I got on a path to become a yoga teacher. I had never really done much yoga. I just like felt like it just felt right for some reason. I went to my yoga teacher training and it completely changed my life. It helped me to heal my body after years of exercising like a fool and doing martial arts and getting really, really hurt. And it really helped me to kind of connect back with the people that I'd lost in my life, like my mother and stuff. I never really hooked up with the Christian beliefs I was raised with. I never really identified with it. But when I did yoga and I would meditate, I would find that, after my mom died, I really suppressed her memory. And my way of dealing with it was to like not even think about her. And then in the years after that, I felt like I couldn't even remember what she looked like in my mind's eye. Without a picture, it was like I didn't know who my mom looked like. And at the end of my yoga teacher training, we did a really deep yoga practice and we were all meditating together. And suddenly I could see in my mind's eye my mother's face. And
mm,
talking to me and telling me that, like I was doing great. And I was like communicating with somebody who I had lost. And it was like the most spiritual moment of my life. And when I returned home, I started teaching yoga, and yoga became a really big thing in my life. And eventually, I met my current partner, my girlfriend, and she gave me this book called The Power of Now. And
oh,
really wasn't much into reading at that point, but you've read it before?
man, that book is life changing.
Yeah. I really wasn't into reading books at that time, but she gave me this book. She says, "You're gonna like it." And I started reading it and I couldn't put it down. And then I bought the audio book and I listened to it over and over again. I still listen to it once in a while when I'm starting to feel like I'm losing my steam. I'll listen to it again. And it just completely changed my life. Yeah, and you've got the practicing the power of, yeah,
Got the inspirational cards in my meditation station right here,
yeah.
and bring out a
Oh,
card each day.
cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of cool. So there's like little cards, and you just pull one out, and it gives you like a perspective for the day.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. Yeah,
Yeah, really cool.
that
I love
thing,
that you said that.
even after my mom and dad died and I was doing all these things to better myself, I like identified with my past. Eckhart Tolle talks about this identification with our pain body. I was so identified with my pain. I thought it was who I was. I thought that I was this Eeyore, this person who was always going to have a sadness that would never go away, that I'd always be the one getting dealt the rough hand in life. And I just accepted that that's who I was. And then I read that book and I was so blown away. I was like, this isn't who I am. I'm not my past. I am who I am right now. And it
Mm.
really released me from this game I was playing with myself, this video game I was playing with myself, where like I died a long time ago and I'm just this game over screen, you know, just floating through life. And I read that book and it was like infinite lives, you know,
Mm.
just nothing. It doesn't matter how many times I fall down now. I've always got the next moment. I've always got this moment that I'm in right now. And so after reading The Power of Now, I started my journey to become a yoga therapist and had to read a lot of inspirational books as a part of those studies. And now I'm kind of really into listening to inspirational books on audiobook. And instead of, you know, getting on Instagram on in the bathroom in the morning, I read a book, you know, and I actually have The Power of Now sitting right there. So if I ever forget, you know, how I really feel about, you know, life and this power of presence, I just open it up and I read a passage, and it just reminds me of who I really am.
Have you read The Untethered Soul?
I did read part of The Untethered Soul. I didn't read the whole thing. I got like halfway through it, and it's actually still sitting right next to The Power of Now in my bathroom, so I should finish it.
It's, you know, even just I keep rereading the first 70 pages of that book. Just, I feel like the author did a great job with like simplifying the power of now just a little bit easier for me to comprehend, because the power of now is just so out there,
Yeah.
uh, or in there. It depends on how you portray it. But the author of The Untethered Soul did a great job. So I'm blown away by the courage that you have demonstrated to recover, using your word of recovery. And I've loved this word recently. Believe it or not, I was watching the Tiger Woods Phil Mickelson round of golf, and they talked about how the best golfers aren't the ones that hit the ball the straightest or the farthest. It's the ones that can recover the best. And I totally stole that. I was like, I love this. And since I've watched that, I've been using that word recovery. So it's really organic that you said use that word as well. It's like how fast I was able to recover, what I used, the tools you use to recover, or how we're able to recover, because it's true. Like, how can we recover? And for you to recover from mom and end the jail and the gun and the suicidal thoughts and the being, you know, kind of broken, I guess is a good way to say it, to recover from that, but then get like kind of get your stuff in order and then experience dad's suicide and then recover again and then have grandpa and grandpa's death and recover again, and you know the sister situation and recover again. Like, it's really a perfect example of what it really means to be alive. I mean, you are living your best life and you're consistently leveling up. And I'd love to invite you to speak of this, Ari, because it's so unspoken, but I'm just so curious. And if it's too presumptuous of me to ask, but I'm just so curious at the. I think you said you were 25 years old when you walked in and found your dad. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm just so curious on on that moment, because if I remember the story correctly, you got a call from your dad inviting you to the house, and you found him after he already shot himself.
So, actually, what happened was my dad called me and told me something is going to happen, basically. He sent me a big check of money and said, something's going to happen. Take care of your sister. And my dad lived in Tennessee and I lived in New Hampshire at the time. And I got a call the next day from my dad's cousin who walked in and found him dead. Um, and then months later, I flew out. Well, actually, I flew out that weekend and I walked. And I think what the reason why you're thinking that I found him is because when I came into the house, there had been no hazmat team that had come into the house and taken care of things. So there was blood and brains and you know like shrapnel of the skull still in the house. Um, for
Mm.
whatever reason, they hadn't cleaned it up at all. So I didn't see his body, um, uh, you know, laying there like my cousin did. But I did see the the kind of gruesome scene left behind. And
Sure.
I think I also included in the book, you know, the my father was Persian, and the way that they bury their dead is to just wrap them loosely in cloth and then to carry them into the grave. And that was really kind of disturbing for me as a 25-year-old to do that. And I saw like his foot kind of poke out from the cloth, and that was my first experience with a dead body, and it was really, really kind of
Traumatizing, I'm
yeah,
sure.
it was very traumatizing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that because, again, it's an unspoken conversation that a lot of people will choose not to talk about. And I try to do my best to speak the unspoken with people that are courageous enough to talk about it because my ultimate goal is to help anybody that listens to this, anybody that reads your story is to know like, hey, you're not alone. Like whatever you're dealing with, someone else is probably going through as well or has already dealt with. And no matter how gruesome or out of the normal it might seem, it it's the unspoken truth of what some people have gone through. And just you being bold enough and courageous enough to talk about it and vulnerable enough, I really commend you and just acknowledge you for that. And I appreciate that because even if there's one person that just hears like, wow, okay, he was able to experience this and still find love in his heart and understand that he is not the pain of his past. He is not the, the experiences that he's gone through. I can get through this too. And I know for a fact that I have someone close to me who has a family member who is contemplating suicide and is experiencing some self-harm, and I'm just sending as much energy her way, this poor innocent person that believes what you used to believe, which is that you are the pain and you are that experience. I'm curious, from your vantage point, what would you say to that person who might be under that illusion right now that they are that pain, they are that experience, that's who they are, and that's how life is always going to be. So therefore, might as well escape now.
Yeah. Well, you know, when people are going through something like that, it's almost like there's no words, right? So, you know, people know that I've lost my parents, and so, you know, when they're dealing with stuff like this, they might come to me and say, you know, like, can you give me any words of wisdom? And really, what I've found to be most helpful for people in those moments is to just know that there are people that still care about them, and if they're at that point in life where they feel like this pain is so much that they're going to want to kill themselves, or they know someone who's going to want to kill themselves, um, to invite those people to consider those around them who they would affect. Because this is the thing that, you know, we spoke about before the video chat ended. For me, the thing that kept me from killing myself basically was that I realized that I couldn't do that to the people that I love, that it would be the ultimate act of selfishness, I guess, to hurt them that way. And you know, it's tough. You know, I've had people in my life who've been suicidal since my dad, and I tell them this. I say, you know, suicide is the ultimate act of selfishness. You know, my uncle recently was suicidal, and I told him, I was like, you know, how could you do that to your grandson? How could you do that to your daughters? You know,
Hmm.
and it's not always a safe thing to say to people who are suicidal, because it could upset them more. But really, that's what I feel is the truth that set me free from actually going through with harming myself or killing myself. So
Hmm.
to those people, I would say just look to those around you that you care about. And if you really, really feel like there isn't anybody around you that cares about you, to look a little bit deeper and open your eyes a little wider, because I guarantee you there's somebody that loves you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there that I agree that there's somebody, even if it's a complete stranger that you haven't even met yet, or the future version of you. You know, the person you haven't met yet might be the 20 years from now. Like right now, what are you, probably about 30 years old?
Yep, 30, 31 right now.
31. I know the 31-year-old versus the 18-year-old suicidal kid. It's like you haven't met that strange 31-year-old man yet, but that 31-year-old man really loves that 18-year-old version of you. And I agree.
It's a really good one.
That's really rich. I love that. So at this point in time, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, if somebody wanted to join you on your yoga journey, your meditation journey, your any of your martial arts that maybe you'd still dabble in and do, like what would be the best ways for some people to kind of reconnect with you or talk further, or um, you know just kind of hang around you? I want to hang around you. I want to fly. Are you still in New Hampshire? Because I want to go to New Hampshire right now and hang out with you,
Yeah, come out to New Hampshire. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
because you have this contagious energy that people are going to want to have more of you. And I know this is not going to be the last conversation we have. I mean, we have so much to talk about between Eckhart Tolle and Untethered Soul and the yoga and the meditation and using your body to, just um, the capacity of what our potential offers us is really within. Like, so much to talk about. We could only get to so much here, but if somebody wanted to continue this combo or reach out, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so it'd definitely be easiest to just contact me on Facebook. Whether you've got an inquiry about, life and you're just feeling like you need somebody to talk to. I love, sharing these stories and these ideas with people who are, struggling, or even if you're just looking for a way to cope with regular stuff, even if it's not these big deals that we're talking about right now. These tools are there for all parts of life. And yeah, friending me on Facebook is great. I have a professional Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/ Ari Deihim, Arideihim. That's a good way to get in contact with me if you're interested in professional inquiries, like you'd like to hire me as your yoga therapist or personal trainer, or you'd like to do martial arts lessons. But if you're just looking for a friend, just go ahead and friend me on this Facebook account, and I'd love to talk to you sometime.
Excellent. That's so generous. And uh, I again, Ari, I'm so glad you accepted my invitation to allow me to ask you some of these. Um, I mean, these are really deep questions from a stranger that we've never met before. Like, we've never had a conversation. You submitted a story. I think Lindsay Hatcher is who connected us,
Right.
and so shout out to Lindsay, and her story is actually in the book too. And I mean, I just thank her for the connection. I thank you for your vulnerability and your open heart. And I'm excited. Even if it touches one person, even if you touch one person, then that's totally worth our journey, because no one should suffer in the way that they think they have to, because it's a choice that they don't realize it's a choice yet. They can change that.
I totally
So
agree. I'm sorry that I'm kind of getting ready to leave work right now. I'd love to talk again sometime soon when we have maybe the Facebook Live thing hammered out a little bit better. And
yeah,
appreciate you having me on.
thanks so much, brother. Have a great rest of your day, man.
You too. Take care. Bye.
So for those of you that want to connect, to connect with Ari, I'll post his contact info in the link in the comments below. And I'll tell you, this chapter, it's in this book. You could actually get his story for free on the website, grabtomorrow.org. Just go ahead and I'll put that link in there as well, so you could read his story and you can connect with him. All proceeds from this book, just so you know, we use this to feed the homeless. So PB&J for Tampa Bay Inc. You could see very right in the beginning, all 100% of proceeds from book sales go to helping us feed the homeless. We've actually now provided over 73,000 meals to those less fortunate, and we're really excited about that. So if you enjoyed this conversation, you want some more, join me on Tuesday, tomorrow. I'll be chatting with Josias and Duja. His chapter in the same book is called No Place Like Home, and he's going to talk a little bit about how he went from living this average normal life to saying, you know what, I want to do a social experiment, and decided to become homeless and move to New York City for 3 months just to kind of see what life was like. So I'm excited for that conversation tomorrow. So tune in. That's going to be tomorrow, Tuesday in the afternoon. And thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day.